In this edition of Locked On Capitals, your Washington Capitals take down the Montreal Canadiens. Alex Ovechkin scores yet another hat trick. And what is the status of Wilson, Oshie, and Backstrom? We'll talk about all of that and more next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen or view of the day. Yes, this podcast is also available in video form, so head on over to YouTube and check it out. And when you're on YouTube, make sure and hit that subscribe button. And if you like the videos, give it a thumbs up or leave some comments. It really helps grow the channel. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, your Washington Capitals destroyed the Montreal Canadiens over the weekend by a score of 9-2. That is what I'm going to go ahead and call a decisive victory. No doubt about it. The offense was firing on all cylinders, but, in all fairness, it was not really a Montreal Canadiens team that's really dialed in, shall we say. We'll talk about that in the show. Then later, we will talk about your captain, Alex Ovechkin, as he scores yet another hat trick and is the first star of the month. And in the NHL, the accolades just keep rolling. And then to close out the show, we will talk about the status of prominent injured Capitals players and when can we expect to see Wilson back, Oshie, and Backstrom. We'll talk about that, but just to get it going here, your Washington Capitals do, in fact, destroy the Montreal Canadiens on New Year's. It was just a really a good way to bring in the new year in a decisive victory. This is a Capitals team that is tuned in and firing on all cylinders. And, you can draw lines to when they started playing better. They spoke about this in DC on the radio there, that Peter Laviolette said that he had a meeting with the players and ultimately said, it's up to you guys to win these games. We drew out the plays. It's up to you to execute it. And I would say they are doing that, and they are buying all into the system, and you are seeing scoring up and down the lineup. You're seeing it on the blue line, primarily with Erik Gustafsson. Wow. He didn't have that start to the season, but I'm glad he found it now because he is contributing. And we need him to keep contributing in the absence of John Carlson, who we know is going to miss a substantial amount of time. I think the Caps said they'll be lucky if he comes back by the end of the season. So to have someone like Gustafsson and Orlov step up, just huge. And like I say, the Capitals, in fact, they were all firing on all cylinders. If we take a look at the box score alone here, it was a game that saw goals by Hathaway, Dowd, Anthony Mantha, a hat trick by Alex Ovechkin, Dylan Strome, and Erik Gustafsson all get on the score sheet. And Charlie Lindgren doing what he does best, and that's playing awesome hockey. He saves 31 of 33. And, on the opposite end of the night was Allen, or on the other side of the ice was Allen. And, I don't think he's a horrible goalie. I really don't. I've observed him play in the NHL for some time. He's not that bad of a goalie, as you saw. It's a really poor team in front of him. And I'm not saying that, none of those mistakes were on his shoulders, but what you saw out there, he is not truly that bad of a goalie. He just is kind of a victim of playing on a really poor team. But in any event, the Capitals played a really solid game and they showed up big. And, regardless of who their opponent is, you want to win in a decisive fashion. And they did that out there, and they did that against the Canadian teams, the Habs. And just a really great win, because some of the pitfalls you can fall into is falling into a trap game where you think your opponent isn't that great, and then they end up beating you. Capitals netminder Charlie Lindgren got the start for Washington, facing the Canadiens for just the second time ever after he spent the first 5 seasons of his career with the team. He picked up the win Like I say, stopping 31 of 33 shots to push his record to 11-4-2 and raise his save percentage to .914 this season. Backup goalie. There's a lot of teams around the NHL that would love to have Charlie Lindgren be their number one netminder. The Capitals are in such a really great position right now to have two rock steady netminders. They have one in the form of Darcy Kemper, of course. The other one that they have is Charlie Lindgren. It has finally put to rest that inconsistency that the Capitals faced in net the last two seasons before this. So just really great for Charlie and Darcy. I could not be any more happy with who they have in net. But the story of the game was the Capitals offense, which scored in bunches to power the team to its 11th win in 13 games, writes NBC Sports Washington. The first goal of the game came quickly. Erik Gustafsson found the back of the net 34 seconds in on the shot from the low slot to extend his active point streak to 7 games. And wow, I talked about this a couple podcasts ago about the pleasant surprise of Erik Gustafsson. A bit of a journeyman around the league, but he has come here, and as of late, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if he's getting more sleep at night, if he is, partaking in a different, exercise regimen or, doing whatever. I don't really care what he's doing. What he's doing is playing really great hockey, and he is dialed in and playing very well. And it'll be interesting. The Capitals have, an abundance of wealth in certain positions, and having, Erik Gustafsson out there playing so well is a good position. I just really hope they can find a way to sign him to an extended deal if he in fact continues to play this way, because he has been one of the truly bright spots on this team in the last week or so. And we just really hope that he can continue to get that production, because the Caps need that from him. Gustafsson's streak is the longest by a Capitals defenseman not named John Carlson since Dennis Wideman. If you guys can remember Dennis Wideman, that's going to go back a ways, but I in fact do remember him. Had a 7-game point streak in October 2011. He scored 6 goals and 7 assists in that span, overall making significant contributions on the offense and going 31 games without a goal to open the season. Washington then stretched its lead to 2-0 4 minutes later when its fourth line production produced its first of 2 goals on the afternoon. Nick Dowd passed the puck to Alexei Protas along the boards, and he got a shot off that. Garnet Hathaway redirected enough to sneak past Canadiens goaltender Jake Allen. So again, sometimes you see certain teams and they get production from just their marquee names or the top 2 lines. The good thing about the Capitals is they have that spread up and down the lineup, including the blue line. You take a look at that: Garnet Hathaway, Nick Dowd, Alexei Protas. So it's a really great position for the Capitals to be in, to have that scoring and that production up and down the lineup going there. So after Montreal started to gain some momentum from there, Lindgren held off several flurries and stopped a few breakaways to send the game into the first intermission with their 2 goals advantage intact. The second period began with a series of penalties by both teams, setting up a 4-on-3 situation for the Canadiens that saw Cole Caulfield score his 20th goal of the season, though Caulfield would go on to score another goal in the period. That frame still tilted well in favor of Washington. And one of the bright spots on the Habs, the Canadiens, is Cole Caulfield. Just a really great player. I think that, if you could take him and put him on another team, I think he would be that much better of a player. But he is one of the bright spots. And if you are a fan of the NHL in general, you will recognize his name as a really great player, and I think you can expect to see big things from him to come. That aforementioned fourth line was added again midway through the second when Dowd scored on the doorstep off a rebound for just his second multi-point game of the season, with both games occurring in the last 12 days. Again, you can draw lines to that meeting with Peter Laviolette to the players. All of these players all of a sudden engaged. That's what we want to see. We want to see that production continue. We don't want to see it dissipate. Ovechkin got off the board only 30 seconds later, scoring a one-timer on a pass from TVR through some traffic. Ovechkin getting a hat trick, doing what he does best. Following Cole Caulfield's second tally, the Capitals then ripped off 5 straight goals. 5 straight goals. Let's not that wash over you. Pull away for the good. Gustafsson, Evgeny Kuznetsov, Marcus Johansson all finished with the game with 3 points, making this the second time all season the Capitals have had at least 3 players record 3 or more points since November 7th versus the Oilers. And it was a funny moment out there if you guys watched the game. Evgeny Kuznetsov is a bit of a silly man out there, kind of an odd duck. I like him, though. I like a silly personality where he was out there skating and kind of doing laps out there, and then he did another lap, and then he finally fed it to Marcus Johansson, and he drove it home. If you guys know, Evgeny Kuznetsov has some kind of odd tactics out there. If you've seen him in the shootout, he comes in really slow, and he takes, and the puck goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then usually it'll find the back of the net. So just a really entertaining guy to watch. He is playing better. Again, Evgeny Kuznetsov is another player that's a bit prone to being hot and cold, but as of right now, I think all things considered, he's playing very well and another great addition to this Capitals team, primarily on the top line center, but at times he has vacillated to the second line and Strome has bumped up. But in any case, playing very well, a bright spot on this Capitals team. The final statement of the game came off the stick of Ovechkin, who scored his 3rd goal in the 3rd period on a feed from Connor Sheary for the 2nd hat trick of the season. With the win, the Capitals extended their active point streak to 7 games and pushed their record to 21-13-5. With 47 points towards the standing, they'll head into 2023 sitting in 3rd place in the Metro, taking 2 days off before hosting the Sabres on Tuesday. If I would have told you guys that listen to this podcast, let's say a month ago, that this Capitals team was going to go on a winning streak, one of the things you would probably ask me was like, did they get Wilson back? Did they get Backstrom back? Did they get Oshie back? Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to tell you they did all of that. And they did it without any of those players. You would have looked at me and laughed, but that is what this Capitals team is doing. They are finding ways to win despite the myriad injuries on this team. So just a really great moment for the Capitals, a decisive victory for this team going forward. The Caps take on the Sabres on Tuesday and the Columbus Blue Jackets on Thursday with a weekend game, or Friday rather, against Nashville. Let's hope this team can keep it rolling. Let's just keep this positive momentum going because the Capitals right now are dialed in and playing great hockey. This is an exciting time to be a Capitals fan. If you're not a fan now, you're never going to be a fan. Hold on tight. It's going to be a great finish to this season. I really do believe it. All right, so after the break here, we will talk about the crazy season for Alex Ovechkin. We all know that, he passed Gordie Howe and he's headed towards Wayne Gretzky in a couple years here, but it's more than that. It's just the milestones and the accolades. They just keep rolling and rolling and rolling. And just a truly breakout season for Alex Ovechkin. We'll talk about him next. Our next partner has a product I use literally every day. I started taking Athletic Greens because I wanted more energy. I wanted a supplement that actually tastes great. I wanted to see what the hype was about. Now I've used it for several months and I love it. It doesn't taste like it's super healthy. It has kind of a mild tropical taste that I actually look forward to taking each morning. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all these things. Now, I personally take it because I have young children at home, and if you have young children, you know that you need that boost of energy. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything. While still tasting good, it supports better sleep quality and recovery, supports mental clarity and alertness. It's the one thing with the best thing. Athletic Greens uses the best of products of latest science and constant product iterations based on third-party testing. It costs less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. It's cheaper than getting all the different supplements yourself. So To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up on the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Thanks for making Locked On Capitals your first listen every day. Make sure to check out Locked On NHL Prospects, your daily podcast covering the next generation of hockey superstars leading up to the NHL draft, plus NHL draft rankings and top prospects comparison for every team. Locked On NHL Prospects available on YouTube and wherever you find your podcasts. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. In this next segment here, we are going to talk about the historic season of Alex Ovechkin. No, we're not just talking about a good season or a great season. We are talking history, a historic season, as he tied and then passed Gordie Howe for number 2 all-time in goals with Wayne Gretzky in the horizon. That is who he's going after. But in the meantime, he continues to knock out great goals and help this Capitals team continue to win some really great hockey games out there. Alex Ovechkin, Connor McDavid, and Tage Thompson have been named the NHL's 3 stars of the month. Ovi has been named Star of the Week 2 times last month. Just think about that. I mean, that is some elite company out there. Alex Ovechkin, Connor McDavid, Tage Thompson, huge names out there. And, this is all, if you take a look at it, Alex Ovechkin, 37 years old, take a look at McDavid and Tage Thompson. Those guys are quite a bit younger. So for him to be in that company, that elite level, it's a young man's game. Make no mistake about it, professional sports. But don't tell that to Alex Ovechkin. He continues to age like a fine wine, continuing to score mega goals, and just a really exciting time to be a Washington Capitals fan. And as we know, Ovechkin got a hat trick against the Montreal Canadiens. It seems like he does it quite often. It's just kind of nothing for him. I went out there and I scored another hat trick. His 30th career hat trick and second this season. This team is rolling. Ovechkin's 30 hat tricks are the 6th most in NHL history. Wow, Wayne Gretzky, 50, Mario Lemieux, 40, Mike Bossy, 39, Brett Hull, 33, Phil Esposito, 32. Alex Ovechkin has scored goal number 806. He keeps rolling. He saw that milestone out there. He saw that he had Gordie Howe out there, and he's like, you know what? I'm not going to be happy just to tie Gordie Howe. I want to put the hammer down, and I want to keep going, and he's done that. So there is no let up for Alex Ovechkin. Just because he passed Gordie Howe doesn't mean that there's any let up to his game. This is great news, Capitals fans, as he continues to move ahead. It is projected that he is going to tie and then pass Gretzky in the 24 and 25 season. This is an Alex Ovechkin that is doing this in modern times. And why is that significant, you might be asking, is because this is the lowest goals scored in a particular era ever. And that is due, in part because, goalies are bigger. They're taller than they've ever been. They're in better shape. They have trainers and all that kind of thing. And it's the butterfly style goalie. If you think back of the goaltenders in, let's say, Wayne Gretzky's era, what they did primarily is they were shorter and, they just kind of kicked at the puck when it came at them with the pads. The new goalies, you take a look at Vasilevsky, for example, huge man out there, takes up a good chunk of the net, butterfly style goaltender. That's why it's harder to score goals. Don't tell that to Alex Ovechkin. He continues to score goals against some of the most elite players out there, the most elite goaltenders out there. And so, you can take a look at Gretzky and you can look at Howe Gordie Howe last played hockey in 1980 and Gretzky last played in 1999, and they played from that era where there wasn't the butterfly style goaltender. The goaltenders in general were that much shorter. The flip side of that coin, however, is they also didn't have the improvements with their hockey stick, right? They were primarily wood sticks in the earliest stages of fiberglass. You take a look at Alex Ovechkin when he does a slap shot and he brings the puck or the stick back in slow motion. You can see the stick kind of arc like that. So there is some bend to it. Is that advantageous for Ovechkin? You bet it is. He's going to knock that puck home that much quicker. The argument then, of course, is that you take a look at Gretzky and you look at Gordie Howe. Would they have adapted to modern times? That all really doesn't mean anything. I guess we'll never really know. But for Alex Ovechkin to do this in modern times where goal scoring is at an all-time low, he's done this through the COVID years, when the seasons were shortened and the condensed, and he did it through the lockout years. He is doing this, and he is achieving these goals against really great odds. Don't let that wash over you. When you hear all these stats, and just to kind of take it all in and know that you are witnessing history pretty much every time you see Alex Ovechkin out on the ice. His first goal in Saturday also marked Ovechkin's 395th career goal scored at home. He is 5 goals shy of becoming the 5th player in NHL history to score 400 home goals. Again, it's not just that. It keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. In 2022 goals, he has scored 26 goals and 19 assists, career 806 goals, 649 assists in 1,313 games. Ovechkin hit numerous historic milestones in December, finishing the month with 13 goals and 9 assists through 15 games and recording points in 11 of those 15 matchups. He hit the 800 goal mark on December 13th and passed Gordie Howe for the most on the NHL's all-time goal list on December 23rd. The 37-year-old also had a hat trick and now has a 30 total in his career, which moved him past Marcel Dion, Bobby Hull, and 6th most in NHL history, writes Washington Hockey Now. Not only that, but Ovechkin also passed Ray Bourque for the most shots in NHL history. Again, everyone thinks, they're talking about him scoring the most goals. It's not just that. It's not just that goal total of Howe and Gretzky. This is a broad spectrum of amazement and just history if you take a look at it out there. Like I said, not only the fact that Ovechkin passed Ray Bourque for the most shots, it's just a multi-dimensional, just a really impressive thing that he's doing right now. And that's just kind of the hard thing to kind of pinpoint and just try to summarize. It's not that he's just accomplishing one goal. He is accomplishing multiple goals, and he's doing it primarily. All of these things are coming to fruition in one season. It is very impressive. It is a great time to be a Washington Capitals fan. For Gordie's sake, those guys in the 1980s, like we talked about, weren't nearly what they are today. So that's what I'm talking about, is Alex Ovechkin is getting this great production in modern times against great odds. So, I mean, that is something that can never be discredited, and I can't hype that up enough, is that he is doing such great things in a time where goal scoring is at an all-time low. Just really impressive. And I look forward to seeing what he can do the remainder of this season and next season. So save some sort of injury or something like that. I think that he could hit that landmark maybe even sooner than anyone thinks he could, just because for the fact that he is dialed in and playing so great. I just look for bigger and better things from Ovi this season and next season. All right, so after the break here, we will talk about Capitals players that are injured and when we can expect them to come back. What is the status of Wilson? What is the status of Oshie and Backstrom out there? We'll talk about that next. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. In this next segment here, we are going to talk about the status of some of the most important players on the team that are injured right now. Nicholas Backstrom, of course, is inching towards his return against great odds. Everyone first thought that he was going to come back at the tail end of this season. or perhaps next season. It's turning out that he might be back sooner than anyone thinks. Of course, we know he had that hip resurfacing procedure. He's missed 39 games so far. His estimated return date is early to mid-January, writes The Athletic. So that is way, way ahead of what anyone thought. The question for me is, what condition is Nick Backstrom going to come back in? Is he going to be in top form? Is it going to take him a while to ramp up? He is defying a lot of odds. When you watched on the NHL Network and all the different ones, when you heard the severity of his injury and, the procedure that he had done to fix that injury, everyone said that's going to be the end of his career. He'll probably come back and play for a handful of games, and that'll be all she wrote for him. As it turns out, he is making great progress. I do have high hopes for Nick Backstrom to come back and play a big role on this team, because the Capitals, they are playing really well right now, of course, but they would even be playing that much better with Nick Backstrom in the lineup. The longtime alternate captain can't catch a break, though, as he came down with COVID-19. I guess the one thing I would say about it is that if there's a time to come down with COVID, if there ever is a time, it's when you're not on the active roster. Although Backstrom's latest bout with the virus is not viewed as a significant setback, the 35-year-old center experienced symptoms, as did assistant coach Scott Allen, who is also in the protocol, according to Laviolette. I talked to Scott and Nick, and they both have had better days, Laviolette said. It whacked them just a little bit. If Backstrom tests out of protocol on Monday, he can rejoin his teammates and resume ramping up, with an eye on the next 7 to 10 days, assuming there are no setbacks with regard to COVID. At least it's now, Laviolette said, of Backstrom's ending up in the COVID protocol. This will be quick. He's been on the ice so long that it won't take him back to come back. And that's a good position for Nick Backstrom. As we know, he's been slowly ramping his way back to making his return. So this should be just a minor setback. So it's not like he, didn't have that cardiovascular health built up. He is moving in that direction. So like Peter Laviolette said, it should only be a minor setback. That's what we're hoping for. And then again, the player of most impact missing from the lineup, Tom Wilson, has missed 39 games. His estimated return is early January. And as I look at the calendar today, it is early January. So he should be coming back at any time, and it's going to make a big difference. The questions now are, who comes out of the lineup when these players come back? I've been asked that a lot. What's my take on that? I would say, knee-jerk reaction right now, I would say probably Snively. I would say probably, Abe Kubel, perhaps Alexiev. And it depends, when some of these other players come back. It's a really hot and cold player like Anthony Mantha. He might be up for a trade at some point if he, dries up and he doesn't end up playing that well. Another player of potential could be Alexi Protas. I know he's been playing well as of late. For me, ultimately, what it boils down to is how they are playing at that moment when players are due to come back. If Anthony Mantha has scored 10 goals in 10 games, they're probably not going to do anything with him. So I guess it remains to be seen who is playing well at that given moment. But, you got to take a look at some of the depth players. You take a look at, again, like I said, Snively. You take a look at Nicholas Abe Kubel. Those would be two names that come to mind. I know that they have been playing well in limited capacity, but someone must come out of the lineup to fit some of these guys into the lineup. Wilson began skating with his teammates on December 9th, shed his no-contact jersey on December 21st, and has been staying on the ice for additional skills work and conditioning after each morning skate. There was a time frame, a window between 6 to 8 months, depending on how they're feeling and their confidence and their endurance and what they're feeling inside of whatever they're dealing with, Laviolette said when asked about Wilson. And eventually they get good enough to get good reps where they can start to get that confidence and they'll be back. So again, I see him coming back sooner than later. He did suffer a major knee injury. I would say that he should take it a little bit easy, but if we know Tom Wilson the way we think we do, he's probably going to be a bull in the china shop in game one when he comes back. But if he could maybe just lay off maybe a little bit until we're sure that knee's good to go. John Carlson's a big one for me, and it's best to not get your hopes up. Struck on the right side of his head by a slap shot on December 23rd. He's missed 3 games so far. His estimated return is late in the regular season, so it is big, and it's great that they're getting players like Gustafsson and Oshie and Van Riemsdyk, all these players to help fill the void in John Carlson's absence. Again, another big player of impact is TJ Oshie, upper body since December 17th. He's missed 6 games. His estimated return is early to mid-January. We know the book on TJ Oshie. He is always prone to the injury bug. Why? Because he always plays much bigger than he actually is. That's why he gets injured quite often. And I'm sure he just tweaked something, and we hope he comes back soon. Estimating a player's return is not an exact science. It's even less than that when the player is 36-year-old and was sidelined by a similar malady in the not-so-distant past. Oshie is progressing, however. The right winger switched from a no-contact jersey into a regular one for Thursday's morning skate, a sure sign that he's ready to begin pushing himself. Like Wilson, he was also stayed out for additional skills and conditioning. So all signs point to Oshie coming back here soon. These are all good things. You can draw lines to the success of the Capitals with Oshie in the lineup. So it is a good thing to get that leadership core back to this team. And, again, some tough questions for Peter Laviolette and Brian McClellan. Who is going to be on this team? Who is going to get sent down to Hershey? Are some of these players going to have to get traded away? I guess it remains to be seen. It's really too hard to pick on where they're going to go. Just based on the fact of, these players are going to trickle back. They're not all going to come back on the same day. So some interesting questions for the Caps, and kind of, ultimately a good position for them to be in. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NHL Prospects, your daily podcast covering the next generation of hockey superstars leading up to the NHL draft. Locked On NHL Prospects, available on YouTube and wherever you find your podcast. So once again, thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it's your team every day. My name is Dan Homey, and I'll talk to you again next time.